Hello, everyone, and welcome to the American Family Insurance DreamBank, where we believe in the transformative power of dreams. I'm Megan, Dream Curator here at DreamBank, and on behalf of our entire team, we're thrilled to have you all with us for today's lunch hour event. As we get started, we would love to hear where everyone is joining us from. So if you could drop in the comments where you are tuning in from, that would be awesome. And so for those of you who have attended our virtual or in-person events in the past, welcome back. And for those of you that are joining us for your very first time, let me introduce you to DreamBank. Here at American Family Insurance, we believe communities are stronger and the future is brighter when people are actively pursuing their dreams. That's why we created DreamBank, an inspirational community destination and digital experience dedicated to dreamers everywhere. From our daily event series to immersive signature programs, there's truly something for everyone. Our offerings are designed to help you celebrate the dream journey, overcome obstacles, and stay motivated. I'm super excited to be introducing today's speaker, Shannon Kelly. Shannon is a certified with the International Coaching Federation as a professional coach. She started her coaching business, Endless Ocean Coaching, about 8 years ago. Her coaching specializes in lowering stress in leaders and organizations. Her educational background is in human development and organizational leadership. She found her calling in stress reduction coaching after suffering from PTSD brought on by traumatic events that unfolded throughout her life. Her experiences gave her radical tools by transforming stress patterns. She now uses these same tools to dismantle stress within her clients. She currently lives in Madison, Wisconsin, and is honored to be able to serve clients globally. In her free time, she likes watching movies with her son and playing with her golden doodle, Phoenix, and gardening. Without further ado, I will pass it to Shannon for today's event.
Welcome. Thank you so much for coming today and sharing your lunch hour with me. I know those are important times to take a break, so I'm really glad that you're here. Again, my name is Shannon, and I'm very excited. When I heard about DreamBank in Madison, I was very excited because I think for me, helping people lower stress levels is really my dream because it's something that I believe in. It's something that I've lived through myself, and it's something that I still work at too. So here we go. We are going to talk about stress, even though I hope it won't be stressful to talk about it. So, but we're going to move along here. Okay. So stress, I think, is one of those things that like unites the human race. And I'll say that, I don't know why I say it so joyfully, but I do kind of feel that way. In humanity, there's a wide variety of ideals and beliefs and thoughts and everything else. But I think if you went out and asked 10 people on the street, they would tell you that living here on planet Earth is stressful. So I think in some strange way, this kind of pain unites us. And I really do feel that way. So one of the things I tell clients, and it's just for you, is that it's normal to feel stress on the planet because we really haven't had peace fully. And so that is stressful to us. We're living human organisms. So just some validation if you're experiencing some stress. The cool thing about the era that we are all living in right now is that we have tools to handle stress that our parents and their parents and their parents surely did not have. There's tons of scientific research to back it up, lots of people with different modalities all over the world, and that is my jam. I kind of sit around and read books about it. So, but that, that's my thing. So the reason that I chose workplace stress reduction is because we spend the most time at work, yet sometimes we're the most unhappy at work. So when I first started coaching, because of what I was experiencing in my personal life, I got a lot of people with grief, and I was going through a lot of grief. So that was really big stuff. And then I realized that stress also can cause grief too. And I started to get these influx of people trying to like abandon ship of their work their jobs and their professions and a whole bunch of things. This is even pre-COVID. So that started to happen. And I was like, gosh, this has to be costing companies a lot of money to keep experiencing this. These are great people. You know, everyone has these unique gifts and these strengths. And if they were played just right, you know, it'd be less stressful for everyone. So that's kind of how I got into this particular niche, I guess. So the one thing that's interesting about stress reduction, and I say a stress reduction coach, people are either excited or they're completely shut down. And I think the reason is people are darn skeptical of being sold something. I know that I am. I get contacted all the time, people trying to sell me something. But yet I think one of the things that makes me unique is like, I know it's hard work because I've done a lot of work and I continue to work on this myself. So I'm not here to sell your best life. That is not exactly it. But I guess I want to give people hope that something different can come to pass with some practice and looking at each individual in a unique way. So one of the things I love about stress reduction is we're kind of returning to our natural state as human beings. I don't think we were meant to live with as much stress as we have today. You know, when I do reading and stuff about other countries and like their lifestyle and their culture, you know, some of those things implemented into their society has really helped them live better. You know, it doesn't completely solve, you know, all the problems in the world, but it does help people overall. And so if we can kind of create that microcosm within an individual and then that family, it kind of spreads out into the community. And that's always been a big part for me personally. So, okay. So before we dive into like stress and what it causes in workplaces, and I won't spend a ton of time there because you guys, you know, we're all living that right now. It's just to be a mirror of what's happening right now. So, you know, I know what's going on and you know what's going on. But first, I was going to talk about the joys of less stress. So one of the things that happens with people is they become more creative. I started to witness this with clients over time. They would start to create more things within their life and create more things in their workplace. So that is definitely a joy of less stress. One of the things that happens is in my work, I talk a lot about boundaries within a person and their boundaries that they kind of like emanate out into the world and how that can really help them with their stress levels. Personally, one of my values, because of the things that I've lived through and experienced, I really value peace and balance. So I tend to attract people who are looking for such ideals. And this kind of lowering stress level helps with that. Okay. People would argue with me about this. And some people come to me because they're like, I have no time. I have no time. I have no time. I have no time. Having no time is a stress pattern. And when stress is reduced, strangely, miraculously, time starts to grow in your life. But for a lot of people, it's really hard to believe that could be true, but it happens a lot. So one of the things that happens with less stress is we feel like we have choices, because when we're stressed, we don't really feel like we have a lot of choices. So I find all of us, when we're less stressed, we see higher outcomes. We see potentials that we wouldn't see before. Definitely kind of a level of curiosity. And I tell you, when I'm stressed, I'm not feeling super curious. But when we're not stressed, that does kind of take into effect. Okay. So a few more things. I won't go into all the miracles of less stress, but I think that I would say that the stress that I incurred especially has helped deepen my compassion for people, a tolerance for people, and certainly trying to always be respectful of people who are different than me. And I think that strangely, stress kind of cultivated that within myself, and I definitely still work at it too. One of the things I love to see is when we're lower in stress, we have higher levels of altruism, which is selfless service, and then just service on its own and being able to do things for people. And I love this list. I would call this list beautiful. I know it's my language, but it definitely is a beautiful thing to watch people lower stress levels. Okay. So I'm not going to spend too much time in the land of how stress shows up at work, but I want you to be aware of it because usually people know internally their own stresses, but they often, especially when we're stressed, we don't know how it's impacting the big and the whole. And I think it's important because with more awareness, we're a little bit more inclined to maybe do something with it or about it at some point when we're ready. Okay, so people show up in two main ways. I actually am not going to use the names of them. You're going to think I'm crazy for not sharing that, but I'm going to share the two sides of it because sometimes it can be triggering to know we're creating stress, and I don't want to do that for you. So on the one side, often when people are stressed, they're one or other or both, or they're one and then they shift to the other. So you'll see why in a minute. So on one side, taking things personally in situations happens when we're stressed. Avoidance, definitely my number one when I'm stressed, avoid of projects and problems. And it may feel like you're not moving very fast, and that, then it hurts our self-esteem. It's a whole trickle down effect. Okay. Can't focus on one thing at a time. And in reality, most research says that focusing on one thing at a time is really important. We can get overwhelmed and shut down. So I call the pattern overwhelm. Every single person I think on this planet has an overwhelm shutdown pattern. It all looks different personalities, different reasons it happens. And it's okay. I mean, that is really kind of like our processor, our little brain processor telling ourselves, you know what, this is too much. We're going to go, and we're done. It isn't really helpful if you're trying to accomplish something or live a full and balanced life, but it is very healthy because it's telling us, hey, we had to cool the processor down, so we had to shut down. So it's good to know that. I see that in people who are exhausted. You just can't feel like you can think your way out of anything. So that's really normal, but not super fun. And it's hard in the workplace, right? And then it bleeds onto our personal lives, of course. Okay, on the other side, there's when people get stressed, the blame game starts happening, backbiting starts happening. I'm right, you're wrong. It's always how I can tell people are stressed. So it's coming. Tends to see problems, only the problems. And because the focus is on the problem, they can't solve the problem. It's a whole thing. I will not go into why that's true because it's a lot. And it also feels like you don't have any choices. Like when you're, problem solving in a curious, non-stressed place with a group of people, AKA cooperation, you're going to see different choices, try different things. How would that look in the big picture, small picture? You can't do that when you're stressed. That's why stress, you feel very alone. Okay. So I totally get that. Okay. So strangely, when there's kind of fear and force used in an environment because of stress, it causes an environment where people can't speak up and has what I call the eggshell environment. It means that there's not cooperation because people aren't safe to speak or actively participate. It also means that the person who is, doing the force, fear, blaming is also not in a good space either. So you just have a bunch of people who are just not in a good space, which is normal, but let's this not, let this not be our normal anymore. I think we're all ready to kind of decide we're going to try something else or to evolve to the next stage of our own personal development, which we are continuously doing, whether we know it or not. So other things that happen in this fear and force space, there is a projection of judgment onto other people, often tell people what to do instead of figuring it out together, creates burnout and high turnover rates. Of course, those are the outcomes you'll see in the data within organizations, and obviously it's costing money. So really addressing those patterns is super good. So, okay. Whew, everybody okay? Everybody okay out there? I know we all experience stress, and it's always hard to hear all this because you're probably going to stories within your own mind of how you've experienced this, or you're experiencing it right now, or you don't want to experience it anymore. So let's all take a deep breath, cleansing breath. So we can move on, because I am going to share some tools towards the end here that are just kind of general tools that I would give in a workshop that anyone can try. They may not be your perfect tool, but they are tools that people can use. Of course, everybody has 1 or 2 tools in stress reduction that works perfectly. And then I find that people evolve too, and then they try new ones. It's I've watched a lot of people go through cycles of growth, as I call them. So, okay, I have a little coffee. Feel free to have some too. Okay. So I wanted to talk a little bit about how less stress leaders show up, because I want you to know what it looks and feels like to have something different. A lot of this is to help pull people into the idea that like, oh, I'm going to lean into this work. It doesn't look super fun, but it could be helpful. So this is why I put it out there. So less stressed leaders tend to take one task at a time, like I said before. They give feedback in a kind and curious way. It's a strange, and of course, personalities are different. We'll talk about personalities in a bit here. They're better able to see how each person creates action, creates outcomes over time. So they're more likely to say, if I do that, how is that going to look this week? How does that look a month from now? How does that look 6 months from now? They tend to be more receptive to including every personality, even if it's really different than theirs, and also be able to pull out individual strengths in every person, because everybody has purposeful strengths and gifts here, and it's really good to seek what those are and see how it can fit into the puzzle that you're living in your work environment. They proactively address problems as an opportunity to grow the team into their biggest potential. And, that's what they're seeking at all times. So there is quite a bit of balance that comes through this process. And usually we're living in unbalance, and that's why it doesn't feel good. It makes sense, okay? Okay, so one of the things that I love, I call it the release of qualities of excellence. So it's something that I just started doing recently, but it's something I've been doing with my own self for a long time. And it's really studying the qualities of excellence and figuring out how we work to bring those out of us. And these, I'm only picked out 5. I only picked out 5 today because I didn't want to overwhelm you, and everybody values maybe a different quality of excellence, as you will see. But I find that these 5 are really helpful for the workplace, and they're ones that we can all work on at any given time, and we probably all need a bit of work on them. So the first one is cooperation. When we are stressed, we tend to isolate, or we tend to maybe be volatile towards people. Those tend to be the 2, or we're just kind of stagnant. So those are the 3 kind of little levels of stress. And cooperation just doesn't happen. So we can create something together that we couldn't have done alone when we use cooperation. And here's the interesting thing, and I am notorious maybe for still figuring this out sometimes, but we have to have the humility not to know that we can't do everything on our own, and that we can have higher outcomes with other people, as other people have different gifts and talents and things that are happening. And strangely, cooperation kind of gives people enthusiasm for a common goal. And I think it's really important, especially in workplaces, to understand how our goals are feeding into purpose and passion. I mean, it's never going to be perfect all the time, but if you can kind of see your strengths and how they kind of fit into the bigger and smaller pictures, there's kind of the sense of fulfillment, and it's a lot less draining. So I'm just putting out there, it's not like in a utopia, something that isn't possible, but it's having an awareness of what it could be for you. So cooperation is one of what I call the qualities of excellence that we're trying to pull out of people as we lower stress levels. One that's really important to me is service. And service can mean many things. Some people overserve and they get burnt out. Some people are serving for different reasons, maybe not ones that are super fulfilling. But I love service because when you feel like a victim of stress, you tend to kind of disengage from service. But as you lower your stress level, the contribution is greater. And you can spend time and attention freely and as you wish. And we feel fulfilled because we're making a difference in someone's life. And I think those are really, really important qualities. We all can do something. Okay. I'm going to go on to 3 more very quickly. Courage. I think lowering stress takes a lot of courage and it takes a lot of bravery. Addressing stress patterns is kind of like taking the next step and living very courageously. I would say that most of my clients, when I talk to them, do not feel courageous, but I see only courage, honestly, because when we have courage, we can face our stress with more confidence. And reaching beyond the comfort zone isn't as terrifying and uncomfortable when we're a little less stressed. So I think that that's important. These are small steps make a huge difference. Okay. So one thing I notice when people lower their stress level, it's because they're putting a trust in themselves, a trust in the world, a trust in their group. They're building trust up. Maybe they had trust pulled down for some reason, and now we're building trust. We can trust our inner wisdom and learn from every experience. I'm a huge proponent of learning from every experience. It kind of allows us to be more in the flow of life and not feeling like this so much, which can happen with stress or just living very, very on the low. Trust allows people to believe and keep a positive outlook. I think even in times where you can't see what an outcome is going to be, having trust that everything is good can come out of this is really helpful. And the 5th one is about detachment. And detachment is experiencing feelings, which we all have because we're very human, but not allowing them to control us or control our next action. So when we have detachment, and I still practice detachment, it's definitely something I still work on. We are generous. We don't allow situations to create as much stress from other people's actions. And then our actions are less like personally driven from stress, which can create a lot of havoc in the world, honestly. And everybody, we go through stages of practice of this. So we're gonna fall down and make some mistakes and make amends. And it happens totally. I've had to apologize sometimes, like we all do. Okay, so that's kind of some of the excellence that I wanted to talk about. So, not to bore you, but over some years, I started to notice that stress patterns were created in about 3 ways. And I wanted to tell you what these were. You don't have to do anything with the information, but I think you'll find it interesting. So I noticed when I was working with clients, different personalities, I would use different tones of voice, different approaches, different techniques with each one of them. And I just kind of just naturally started doing this, but then I was like, I coached that person really different than I coached that person. So I started getting into personalities. If you go to 16personalities.com, you can learn more about your personality. I love that website, by the way, and I actually use it when I talk to clients about other people. Like if you have a personality here, they can interact with another personality in a better way if they get to know the personality better. And personality, to me, I didn't know a whole lot about it, honestly, before I started really getting into it, but it really is kind of like a coding that are a programming within ourselves that kind of I think helps set some balance in the world, that no matter where you go, personalities are about the same percentage, which I find really amazing. So anyways, every personality takes on stress differently. So as I started to notice this, I can literally have clients say now to themselves, oh, no wonder this bothers me. That's kind of my personality trait. And then they can kind of empathize for someone who has a different personality, that is not a big thing to them. So, it's a huge relief to use those kind of tools. The other thing that I found really valuable is I started to notice that people's value systems, no matter their personality, what people value, and I do values worksheets with everybody. I love doing this as a workshop because it's super fun. And people get the most out of this workshop. I really like this one a lot. When we understand our values and we understand why they get stressed, it's a huge deal. And actually, one of the tools I'm going to share with you at the end is like a pared down version of this concept. So feel free to grab a pen and paper so you have that. Okay. And then the last thing that really causes stress with people are their experiences that created throughout their lifetime. So I noticed when I was talking to people and hearing their stories and going through different scenarios of stress, that these were the three things that really could determine someone's stress patterns. Of course, life experiences is very vast, but each life experience has meaning, and then it produces a story within us, and we get stress from it. So I'm gonna leave it at that. Okay, now you know. Now you know. So when I do stress reduction in work environments, I'm really working with stresses that I call surface and moderate. And those are just words I use. I'm never going to identify it as that. But these are things that like we can use a reframe or some sort of tool to really move through this so it doesn't come up for the person, or we're going to use a few tools and it will work for someone. And then there's more complex, of course, like PTSD, deep-rooted triggers that doesn't happen in work environment. This kind of work, but can be done outside of it. So just so that you know. Okay. So I really wanted people to have a few tools that they could use. I'm going to go through these tools as slowly as I can. Usually when I'm teaching it, I can see people and I know how, they're receiving it and how it's showing up for them. And if all three of these tools, none of them resonate with you, there is nothing wrong with you. These are just a few tools that can be used kind of on a massive way with people. If you want to practice it, if it works for you, it might not work for every person. That is kind of the beautiful thing about having such a variety and in this time period we live in. But I wanted you to have this, okay? So in order to do this first tool, I call this tool the fishbowl, okay? You'll see why I call it the fishbowl in a minute. Really, to have the fishbowl work, especially when we're very stressed, you need one person that tends to be an objective advocate, doesn't have a lot of opinions, which is, I know, hard to find in our friends, right? But having one person who's kind of steady emotionally to be able will you look at this with me and tell me what you see after I tell you about it? So you need someone who can be really objective, right? I mean, in coaching, that's kind of what we're doing, is I can see it because I'm not in the fishbowl, obviously. So, so I have people literally imagine a fishbowl. And I tell you, take the situation that's stressing you out, and I want you to put it in the fishbowl so we can walk around the fishbowl and see what's going on, because I bet we'll see something differently. So I definitely have people imagine themselves in the fishbowl. They're watching themselves being stressed out by the situation, by the people, the environment, but we're a bit protected because we got this big piece of glass in front of us, and here we are, right? So, so now you have your stress in the fishbowl, and we're walking on the outside of it, and you will be amazed what you see walking on the outside of something. We can kind of detach a little bit because it's not really happening to us right now. We're not having a big deal about it. I will say there's a little bit different version of this. I might actually share with you today. I seem to have some time, which is good. Okay, so after you put your problem in the fishbowl and you're walking outside of it, I want you and your friend to both look at the situation. So you're telling them the situation and how it's affecting you, how the other person's acting and responding, and first, I want you to see if you see anything that's different on the outside of it than you do on the inside of it, okay? That gives us some greater awareness to what might be going on here besides what we think is happening when we're stressed. And then we're going to ask this lovely friend who's heard our story and is quietly listening, not trying to solve the problem. And they're like, you know what? I see something different. Didn't you just say that so-and-so just had a baby? Maybe they're really tired and they're not actually like grumpy at you. They're just extremely exhausted. So like in a situation like that, they might be able to see something pivotal, and that can help release some of your stress about it. It's not so personalized, right? Because a lot of our stress feels very personal for the most part, unless someone's being detrimental by nature. Everybody's doing the best they can, and some things are different than we know. So, so there's the fishbowl. So have your friends see what you cannot see. Okay. So if you have any questions, please ask them later. The other thing besides the fishbowl is I tell people, we're going to get in a helicopter. We're going to fly over this a few times to see if we can see something different from above. And it's amazing how the brain responds to being separated from the stress, so you can see things more objectively. And that's really what we're trying to do when we're stressed. Okay. When we're trying to reduce it. Okay. So, let me take a deep breath for a minute. We're going to go into tool number 2 in just a second here. Whew. Okay. So this one is called the exercise of values. So I talk about values a lot. Actually, I might put it on my website later, or we can hand it out somehow by email. But I have a value sheet that I work with every client, and I have them choose their top 10. You can choose more or less. It's not a huge deal, but I like that because it gives people a starting point. So when I have people do this, I have them define what makes their values important in 1 or 2 sentences. I want it short and concise so that people understand why it's important to them. Values are why people get triggered with stress and friction and confrontation a lot in this world. And we don't understand how holding on to that is really hurting ourselves and hurting other people, maybe the world around us. So it's why it's so important. And it's really good for people who work with patients and customer service, understanding values, because it can help us not be so overwhelmed by other people's triggered responses. So the whole thing. Okay. So you defined your values. You probably want to do this when you're not stressed. I wouldn't say this is a fun exercise before. And then you can use this information when you do get stressed to kind of figure stuff out. So we're often stressed. One of our values feels like it's being violated. Okay. Let's say one of my values is peacefulness right now. It makes sense for me because of what I've been through and what I try to work towards and all this stuff. So let's say I have an experience and I take it as they're trying to inflict non-peacefulness in my life or something like that, right? I'm going to do this process or a similar process just to move through it so I don't have to hold on to it so long. So when you realize that one of your values has been violated, or you could use anywhere, it doesn't have to be violated. I know this sounds weird, but you almost need to sit in the discomfort for a little bit. I find sitting in discomfort can be really helpful because it can help us eventually move forward. Avoiding it doesn't work. Spreading it out to other people doesn't work. And so just sitting in it a while is kind of helpful sometimes. And then I love teaching people the process of acknowledging and validating. Every coach, therapist, some leaders on earth know how to acknowledge and validate. So I might say something like, so-and-so has violated my peacefulness. So I'm acknowledging it. That's me saying, I acknowledge that of course I would be triggered because this value is being violated. I use the word violated, but it may not work for everybody. Okay. And then I say, you know what, this is normal. This is normal for me and what I value and how I see the situation right now. So the thing about this acknowledge and validation, especially when you're new to it, and especially if the stress is new and fresh, you might have to do this several times, almost as like some kind of meditative mantra to try to release it from your brain, your body that's responding to it in order to kind of release it. Okay. So you might have to do it a few times. It's okay. That would be normal. And then when all the feelings have got out and you're like, it's okay. Okay. You know, then that is the time to say, you know what, I think I need to look for a new perspective now that my feelings are cleared, because going through this trigger over and over is not super fun. And that's usually how people land on my doorstep, quite honestly. But it takes a long time for us to release enough feelings before we're like, you know what, I need to do something about it within myself. And so this is a values exercise. So I would say in workplace stress reduction, values exercises are the biggest, most effective way to reduce stress, because then you start to understand the values of your team, the values of yourselves, and how the functioning is either honoring or dishonoring those things. And you can create a better work environment. You can also encourage people to like move through this process of growth so that maybe they're not experiencing it the same way. So there's that. Okay, so that's tool number 2. So tool number 3, and I was a little hesitant whether I was going to share tool number 3. So here's how tool number 3 came out. So it's pretty personal. This was actually before I actually had PTSD. I think I was developing it because of other events that happened before bigger events, and I was having overwhelming anxiety. Like things were like popping into my head over and over and over, and it was like I was reliving little moments that I just could not let go of. And I was like, I can't keep doing this. And this is before I knew about coaching and therapy and really any tools. I like had virtually no tools. I was very naive in the world of understanding tools and stress. So I created this as kind of a survival mechanism, but strangely, it works. It really works. It mirrors some other tools that I've seen, but I call it releasing the bloom. So when something was really bothering me, it would feel like it was tugging on me. And I kind of imagined like it was like I couldn't let go of it. And so I started to imagine there was a balloon attached to like my clothing, a balloon, and I would put the thing that was bothering me the most, I'd put it in the balloon and I would cut it and I would go away and I would come back, right? Because anxiety tends to be repetitive and doesn't quite go away super fast. And so like I would imagine the balloon again and I'd put it in and I would cut it. And I would keep doing this until it finally cleared. It was kind of like a way for me to let go. And as you can tell from this tool, releasing the balloon, it works really good for grief, because when we're experiencing grief, we're oftentimes reliving it over and over and over. And like, it seems to be all consuming. I mean, that's the way it is when someone passes or we lose something that's very important to us. We kind of experience it over and over and over. So even though that isn't getting in and really, doing the work of, being a soothing balm to whatever hurt that we're experiencing, it is really helpful. Like say, I mean, you could use it even with something small. Let's say like, you're like, I know I have to pay that bill. And it keeps like coming into your mind, right? Like, oh, I got to pay the bill, but it's like distracting you from your work. You could also put it in there and cut it and let it go, because you know that it will get taken care of eventually. So these tools are very broad, obviously. And I just wanted to make sure that people had some tools. Other things that I find really helpful are we tend to be like very exhausted right now. And I like self-care that gives the brain a break, that gives our body a break. Because in those moments, especially of quietness, it can be anything, whether it's exercising or meditating or yoga or whatever it is you love to do, golf, any of those things that you can kind of do and center yourself in some quiet time will certainly help with stress. Okay. All of those things will help. If they're things that call to you, don't do other things that people suggest to you if it doesn't call to you, because it's not really going to work in the end. Okay, you've listened to me talk for almost 40 minutes now, very solidly, by the way. And I wonder if you have any questions, and then I will let our great host, Megan from DreamBank, let me know what questions that might be helpful in answering today for you guys. So feel free to add some questions. I'll give you a minute to think, honestly.
Hi, Shannon.
Hi.
What helpful tips and tricks you have shared so far. People, you are all welcome to add things to the chat or Q&A of questions you have to kick things off. But Shannon, so you mentioned recently like the balloon technique of how like putting things into the balloon and letting it drift away. What are like other situations you think that technique could be useful for?
Yeah, that one works really good for repetitive stress that will not you just can't let go of it. So I'll share actually another tool that I think would be helpful is sometimes writing down our stress, crumpling it up and throwing it away can be really helpful. Either physically or actually you can do it mentally too. Sometimes I imagine that clients are crumpling their paper, like chucking stuff imaginally away, because a lot of times stress is an over exaggeration of a situation, and it's causing, like, I can't think of a better word, arousal in our body and our brain, and it's just draining the energy from us. So those could be used in anything that is distracting you at work. It just depends. Everybody has different stress stories, so it's hard to even really give concrete examples because everybody is so different. Everybody's different. So.
That's helpful to know. It's like better for like repetitive ones is that technique. We had wine go through it. Ivy asked, can you clarify? You said you said stress patterns are created in 3 ways: personality, experiences, and then they didn't know what the third one was.
Yeah, and this is just from my observation. So obviously I have a bird's eye view of a smaller group of, everyone on Earth, of course. It's personalities, having a moment myself, to be honest. Personality. Let me go back and look. I'm so sorry. Maybe it's because I know people are watching. I don't know. Let me go back.
Shannon, I think we had someone phone and Kim said values.
Values, thank you. Only talk about it every day on the hour. So yes, values, how we value things, definitely. Thank you.
No, I love it. No, it's all right. And you were asked on the fly for it. Someone asked, do you have suggestions on how to deal with persistently negative thoughts?
Yes, I do. With negative thoughts, one thing I know about negative thoughts is the root of them are trying to assist us and take care of us, which sounds totally opposite of what is true, right? Because it's making us feel awful and it's not helping us move forward. But that part of us that is repeating those thoughts over and over thinks it's being helpful. So a lot of times when I'm working with a client, we may try to form a relationship. It sounds really strange, but a relationship with that part of us that is having all these negative feelings, or it's trying to assist us in ways that aren't really productive. Trying to take care of that part, because oftentimes those parts of us just need reassurance, or they need care, and to know that you can handle things on your own. And yes, I'll stop hitting the replay button of this thought if I think you can handle this on your own. So it's kind of like this kind of dynamic relationship with ourselves. We're multifaceted. We just are really coming to terms with what that looks like, and we can hear it a lot in stress. So yeah.
Our next question is, can you offer ideas for how a sensitive person can let someone know that how they prefer to receive feedback?
Yeah. Can you repeat the first part of that question real quick?
Yeah. So you were like, person asking the question, to give like a little further context with it, was saying that like oftentimes when people are stressed, they share feedback in unhelpful ways. So they were hopeful for ideas of how a sensitive person can let others know how they prefer feedback.
Yes, and this is from one sensitive person to another. It makes me very gifted, but it is also like a beacon of feelings and things going on in the world. So I totally get it. First, if you want, because really what you're doing is you're creating a boundary. This is what we call boundary work. First, you have to ask the person, hey, are you receptive to co-creating a better feedback environment for me? So you have to get their permission, because you don't want to go in there and like demand or say something and then they get triggered and then they spew back on you. It's a whole, okay, it doesn't really help. But if you can say, hey, I respond to feedback in this way, and I want to see if we can co-create this together. It may not be like how you receive feedback, but it may be helpful for me so that I can be more productive, feel more part of the team, and create a better relationship between us, and that I value. And if you go in that way, not projecting like, oh, you hurt my feelings again, because then in reality, you're just triggering them again. It's a whole thing. I know it's, and this is a practice, but I find that asking permission is really the most best way to like give feedback to someone else to get something that you need. So yeah. Oh no, I can't hear you.
That was such a helpful like initial point of like the way you said asking permission for how you would like to receive it. It's like making it level set for everyone. On the other end of it, how do you recommend people recover and move on from negative feedback and not take it personally?
Oh man, it is a process. So know that it's not a one-time, one tool fix all thing. I think is really helpful, because people blame themselves. I hear it a lot that they can't move on and they can't move forward and moving. And really, it's a process and it's going to take a little while. I don't really have any tools specifically for kind of doing it yourself. It is a whole kind of dynamic process. And it's not a super fun process, but once it's done, you'll feel like clear. But it is possible. I think that's probably the best thing that I could say, is that it's a process. Be patient with yourself. Know that it's helping you learn and grow, learn more about yourself. And as you recover from it, it will help you be able to have more strength and to work with different personalities, have different tolerance level in the future. I sure have a lot more tolerance than I did a long time ago because of some of the things that I went through. So.
Do you have any techniques or tools of how people can track their stress and see if they're improving on it?
Yeah. Okay, so one of the tools, and I learned it as a very baby coach 8 years ago. And I actually came from the coaching program that I did, and it's called energy leadership. And it's really just a way to identify how we're showing up in different places. If you look up energy leadership, you can kind of look at the little model of it. And the lower levels, the 1, 2, and 3 of this thing, you can identify yourself in it. And when I first would work with clients, especially that were stressed a lot, I would have them carry a little notebook with them. And I would have them write down situations in which they were experiencing the different levels of stress. And that, for me, gave them some buy-in of like, I'm going to work on this because I just realized I wrote down 97 things this week, and half of them were when I went shopping at the grocery store, and I'd really like to live differently. That kind of thing. And so I think that it's good to, like, you could even reflect at the end of a day. I think that would maybe be a great tool. Would see like, these are the places I got stressed, and these are the places that I could see growth that I haven't seen before in myself. And those two things, I don't think reflection should only be negative or like of the things we're not super great at, because not super great at everything, like it's not humanly possible, can be really helpful and kind of bump our self-esteem up. And we need that. All of us need that. I'm not alone in that either. So
That's a great tip on it. We've seen that at DreamBank, we have a time tracker and have seen a lot of people when they're always like, I have no time to do the manual labor of being like, okay, this is what I'm doing at this time to this time. And then being able to kind of over the course of a couple of weeks, see what that looks like. But additionally, I think it's so important for stress because there's stressors throughout the day and they range within it.
yeah. Stress eats time. And that's, if you feel like you have no time, there's probably a lot of stress there somewhere.
Absolutely. What are tips you have for improving people's self-esteem when they have been inundated with stress?
Yeah. Well, I think acknowledging, that's why I bring up the kind of global thing. I'm like, you're not alone. This isn't like, I kind of said this once to a client. It was perfectly for her. So don't, take any offense to it. But I said, you're not alone in your pain. You're not super special. Like everyone is experiencing this with you right now. And I actually meant to say that to her because she was feeling like it was just solely hers and only she had pain. And so it's kind of been a joke. It's something I share in workshops and stuff, of course, with her permission. But talking about everybody has the same experience and we shouldn't feel shameful for having it. We haven't had peace, so we only know stress. Now we're just learning new things. And when you learn new things, you feel vulnerable. You feel like you're not intelligent, even though everybody has their own beautiful intelligences and strengths. It's just a new learning that we're just kind of coming into right now. And I think if we just validate that, we can feel a lot better that we can do this together. So.
Absolutely. Not making it feel like it's just you experiencing it, but you've got people with you and people that are on today are experiencing the same things. What is a tool or something that you would love people after this session, after tuning in today, to implement today, or a way that they can feel not instant gratification, because this is obviously something that's been going on for a long time in a lot of our own lives, but something that it can be a quick win?
Yes. So there is a breathing technique called the box breath. And the military uses it and teaches it very strategically to people who are going into combat because it helps you breathe in a way that creates calm within your body, because our breathing tends to trigger things within our body. And the box breath is literally, you breathe in for 4, you hold for 4, you exhale for 4, you wait for 4. And honestly, when I first started coaching, if someone was telling me about a stressful situation that I could relate to a little more than I needed to in a session, I would start using the box breath very, collectively. I kind of got good at people not noticing that I'm doing this breath. But it really helped me stay present in the moment and separate myself from my stress so that I can be there for another person, which is really important, obviously part of the work. So if you do anything, I think Headspace, you can do the square. You could probably go on YouTube, and I'm sure that there's a walkthrough of, the box breath. And I think that would be an amazing one. You can do it every hour on the hour. I would not be opposed to that at all. So.
Coming back to that breath is always so
important. Really? The first thing I do when I get stressed is I stop breathing. I've even had, when I was in my coaching training, other people be like, I hear you not breathing. And I'm like, oh gosh, I didn't know that was happening. And so that became a real awareness for me of how important breath is. So.
Yeah, if we want another unifier, I think everyone on this call has stress and breathes. So you are not alone in what you're experiencing.
Yeah, for sure.
All right, Shannon, thank you so much for sharing your time and insights on helping us combat stress and be able to pursue those dreams. We need to overcome lots of stresses. So thank you for sharing these insights. So here at DreamBank, we truly believe in the power of dreams and celebrate all the vibrant dimensions of our community that's made up of dreamers. As we wrap up, we would love to ask, what is one piece of advice you have for someone who is pursuing a dream right now?
Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. What a great question. I'm going to be super vulnerable here. I would say that like everything that I've worked for and I'm passionate about, um, I I couldn't do it without continuing to face my fears. So it would be normal if someone's trying to build a dream to be super terrified that anyone is going to need it or use it or be helped by it. But if you feel that calling and that is your dream, keep pursuing it. And I think that those people eventually find their way to you. And so, because when you dream about something, you're not alone. It's going to be shared with some other people on the planet. And I feel like everybody goes through certain things so that they can become helpers and selfless leaders of helping others with something. So keep going. Even if you're a little scared, it might actually mean you're on the right track. So.
I love that. I love someone commented, you can't have the rainbows without the rain, which I feel like is just such a beautiful sentiment to end this session on. I had mentioned throughout this event or in the chat that we have our upcoming Dream Academy Purpose course, which kind of dives into a little bit more of the values and different techniques you can help refocus your dreams. So if you're interested in that, be sure to check out our website, and we look forward to you tuning in with us soon. Have a good day.